Hello, welcome back to another Level Up with Aaron video, Gods of Olympus. Thanks for tuning in. This is post the recent balance change update, which came out 1.10. That was some changes to skeletons, defensive towers, monuments, houses. Generally speaking, it was intended to be a defensive buff, but they did nerf the Hera Vengeance Warriors, and that's something that I was trying to avoid, or I discouraged doing, because I thought they were pretty well balanced the way they were before. Anyways, we'll see how it goes with some of the changes. I'm not going to spend too much time in this video, only a few minutes talking about the update and some of the changes. The bulk of this video, I'm going to be talking about the gods. I actually had a request on the forums for a discussion about all of the gods, their strengths, weaknesses. So I'm going to spend the majority of the video talking about the gods. So with that in mind, let me touch a little bit on the update here. They did make a change to Skelly's, specifically in Hades' reanimate ability. Now it no longer charms enemy defensive skeletons to your side, it just kills them. And you can see they increase the strength of reanimate too, but for all the skeletons you kill, it actually takes away from the skeletons you can res. So that's one point to keep in mind. So now skeletons are actually a pretty good viable defensive unit, and Hera Vengeance Warriors were nerfed, so maybe Skeletons might take the place for a lot of defensive help. As you can see here, look at, there's a defense I just did recently where here I am dropping both Vengeance Warriors and Skeletons trying to stop this attack. And prior to the recent update, this defense I probably would have won because Vengeance Warriors were really effective. Now with this recent change, I actually, no matter how I dropped or where I dropped, I was unable to stop the attacker from kind of slowly, methodically going through my base. So yeah, like I said, I'm not in favor of the Vengeance Warrior nerf. I think that they were good. Now defense is kind of back to where it was at before, where the only way you're going to win defensive battles is if you have a ton of enemies helping you out. And I'm talking about winning defensive battles against people lower level than you, because we all know that the balance is skewed for offense, which is fine, but if you can't beat people lower level than you by defending your base, then that's something that seems, it's a little wrong. And with the Hera troops, that wasn't really the case. So, yeah, maybe the developers will take a look at that and put the Hera troops back to where they were at. I think they weren't like the Acolytes that were before, where they were really OP. I think Hera troops were a pretty good balance. They could effectively take out the gods, but I'll give it a few more, days, weeks, or whatever. I'm going to make some changes to my base. This will be the last time, or the last video I do with this current layout. I'm actually going to incorporate some Hades houses, as well as some of the Hera houses, since they had damage increased on explosion. So hopefully, maybe they'll help out on defense. And then also they made minor changes to the defense turret damage for Cyclops towers, I believe, and I think they increased the range of another one, but they're small, minor changes for the most part. I'd say the assist troop option changes were the big change. So yeah, with that in mind, I'm going to go ahead and start talking about our gods here. This will be helpful for all players, but obviously especially helpful for lower players, maybe players that haven't unlocked all the gods or trying to decide between unlocking different gods. So I'll kind of start with Zeus here. He is the first god you got to get in the game. He is a well-rounded god. He's pretty tanky. He has decent health. He also does decent damage, has decent strength, and his abilities, chain lightning, is good for taking out enemy hoplites and skellies, etc. It's not a damage or a building defensive offensive attack. And lightning storm is really his offensive building attack. It's not real effective, but you can see it does like 1100 and 10 bolts of lightning, so that's 10,000 damage when you use it, which compared to some of the other gods. What amount of damage they can do with their second ability, it's kind of low. However, his third ability, Slow Time, is arguably the best third ability in the game. With Slow Time, it allows you to take out bases or take out a majority of key targets early on, and then effectively, weaken the enemy's defense, while all of their healing from buildings or damage from buildings, etc., is all slowed by the strength of your slow time ability. So it slows it down by 81% and it lasts 35 seconds. So that means that the healing is decreased by 81% of the Apollo houses, buildings. The damage they do is decreased by 81%, and the hoplite spawning is decreased by 81%. So it's definitely a must have ability. Especially as you progress through the game in the mid-level range, maybe the 50s, 60s, it'll start to become more and more important. Lower levels, it's not as critical, and you can unlock third abilities very early on in the game anyways, maybe one or two. But so that he is useful for that ability. I would like to see him maybe get a little bit of love with his chain lightning and his lightning storm here, but his third ability is great, and he's tanky, so he's not a horrible god. None of the gods are horrible, but definitely I'd probably say he is the least favorite god for most players, just because as far as offensively taking out stuff, he's not super effective. So, with that in mind, I'll go to almost the 180 of him, which is Aries. He is the highest hitting strength god in the game, so he is great for single target DPS. And he also has good health, so he is a tanky god as well. His whirlwind attack is great for taking out hoplites. It's also great for cutting through houses, but it is something you don't want to use on monuments or temples. It's really ineffective at taking those buildings out. So you'll just spin and sit at them and not really do anything. So when you're trying to take out a big single target like a temple or a monument, you would want to use his second ability, which is Battle Charge. And what this does is he charges directly from where he's at and goes through buildings, usually if you have him pumped up, but and he charges from as far away as 1,400 yards and does a lot of damage. So that's really his bread and butter move as far as taking out temples. You can also sit and wail on him because his strength is so high, and he can do that pretty well. His third ability is Bloodlust, and what this does is it basically pumps him up, so it enrages him. So he's doing, if you kill some hoplites after you pop this ability, then you're going to make him grow, and then he's going to progressively do up to a maximum of 200% strength. And during this time, he also takes less damage. So this is a great ability. This is what you'll see a lot of the top players, even mid players, use and go through bases pretty well with. His when you pop the Bloodlust, Aries goes to town. So definitely make sure when you're using this ability that you're taking full advantage of it. And you, like I see a lot of players, they'll pop Bloodlust and then they'll take out one or two things, and then they'll walk Aries around the perimeter. You pretty much want him on buildings the entire duration of that Bloodlust ability, as opposed to walking around the perimeter. The next god is Aphrodite, and she's actually the highest range DPS god, but she definitely is pretty low on the health spectrum, so you want to keep her in the back. Her abilities, of course, are Charm Units and Charm Building. Charm Units is possibly one of the best abilities in game, just because anytime you can charm the hoplites so they're not attacking you, it also gives you a cover from enemy defensive turrets, etc. So you charm those hoplites. That's great to get that ability up if you have her as high as possible. Charm Building can also be effective. What this does is it charms it to your side. A lot of people will drop the charm building if they're having her solo anything like by herself, or just to get one of those pesky turrets off of your side like an Archimedes tower or a flamethrower. And the odd duration here, so that means for 6 seconds that you charm the tower, and then that tower will attack the nearest buildings, and it'll usually attack the highest health buildings. So if it's by barracks or monuments, it'll target them first. and it will do damage to those buildings for the length of your odd duration. So mine's pretty short. So basically, as soon as it wears off, then all the enemy defense target it and they'll take it out. Her final ability is Awe, and this makes her invisible. She doesn't take damage, and then this also increases her ability, or reduces the recharges for both her charm ability. So you can see the recharge is 15 and 13 seconds. So when you pop Awe, you can now charm every, like, I'll just say if it's 50%, you can now charm in half the time, so instead of being every 13 seconds, maybe it's every 7 seconds. So that's a great ability in combination with your charm. So usually, you'll pop Awe, and then you'll be charming as much of the army over to your side, or as many barracks and defensive buildings over to your side. And then she's also invulnerable, so it's kind of like if you see she's about to die, you want to pop that ability. So that's a good ability. It's definitely one of the ones that I'd probably say to get last as far as must-have abilities. So you can kind of keep that in mind. I wouldn't waste your time getting this one on early on, because there's a lot of other abilities that are better. Next, we have Athena, and she is by far and away the best. Well, now with Hera, she's decent tank as well, but Athena is the tanky god. You bring her out there, she's got really high health, she has good strength. Her abilities are Summon Hoplites and Aegis. Summon Hoplites are great for adding troops to your side, like I said earlier, with the charm too, as well as just keeping the defensive buildings and the defensive troops off you. So that's an ability I use a lot, and definitely one to level up. Anytime, like I said, you can keep the enemy defenses off of your gods, that's a good thing. Aegis is the ability that you pop when you want her to take, or she's taking a brunt of the damage. So like a lot of people, and it's a good strategy, is to start with the Athena on your drop in, so she's the first one taking aggro, taking fire from the defensive buildings and the defensive troops, and you pop this ability, and it makes her immune to 90% of the damage done, damage reduction. So she basically takes very little damage when this ability is running. So that's a great ability to pop when you're starting with her. And then Inspiration is her final special ability, and this is definitely kind of goes hand in hand with Bloodlust and Slow Time. When you pop Inspiration, it increases the damage done by all the people in the range of the circle that goes out from her. It also reduces the damage taken by targets in that range as well. And it lasts for 18 seconds in my case with the max level. It's definitely a great ability. It'll help you when you pop that get through a large chunk of the base. So just like Bloodlust, you want to make sure that when you use Inspiration, you're getting the most out of it. So you're having your gods focus on all the key targets, buildings, monuments, whatever. Why this ability is up, you definitely don't want it to go to waste. And I'll go over Hera. Hera is she is a tanky god as well. Does very little damage, so mostly she's out there to absorb and keep fire off the gods. She does range damage though, so that's a note. She has a whip as opposed to being melee like Zeus and Athena and Aries. She actually does her damage from range. She whips things, so keep that in mind. Sometimes she won't necessarily draw the fire as easily as Athena will, because she won't be near the front. She'll be whipping people from farther away, and you're like, oh, I want to make sure the fire's on her. So sometimes you have to manually kind of make sure the defense is targeting her. Her abilities are definitely, like I said, tanky abilities. So except for her final absorbing strike, so this heals her by the amount of damage she does. It kind of seems a little lackluster, I guess. If you want to use it early on and just kind of keep her alive for the whole battle, that's great. But the more interesting and the more fun ability in my mind for her is Revenge. So this does the damage back to all the things that attack her. So Damage reduction during this ability is 29%, as well as the duration is 12.7 seconds, and she reflects 150% at this level, which is awesome. So basically, if you put her by an Apollo monument or by any of the towers, all the damage that she absorbs from them, she's going to deal back 150%. So that's a great ability for taking out some pesky defenses. I pretty much use her at this function, at this level right now, for her third ability. It's definitely OP for low levels, meaning, you put her in the middle of a base and you use this and you take out a majority of the enemy's base or all their houses. So at the higher levels, it is effective, but not as effective. Obviously, depends on the base layout as well. So a lot of people have been doing spread bases to kind of counter Wrath, and that does work well. Next is Apollo. Apollo is kind of your well-rounded jack of all trade gods. He has medium health and medium strength. He does do, as far as range damage goes, though, he is right behind, I believe, Aphrodite in just auto shot, auto attack range damage. His abilities, flaming arrows, these are awesome for single target damage. They also are awesome for crowd control. I pretty much just use flaming arrows all the time with him. Sunstrike ability can be used in combination with Artemis's long shot for taking out temples, so that's a good 1-2 combo. And it's actually, this ability is great for doing the gods challenges, because a lot of those Olympia challenges, you have to kind of combo the temples down in order to beat the levels. So you want to level Sunstrike probably at least just for the Olympian challenge. But flaming arrows, depending on your strategy, I think is a superior, just because it's awesome. Like I said, for crowd control, it does burst damage when it hits. Area damage is huge, so you get these pesky acolytes coming after you, and you pop that, and it wipes them out pretty quick. And then, of course, his last ability, which is Healing Light. This is great, when you're in there and you're getting low, or you usually want to pop this in the middle end of the battle, and it just, makes sure that your key gods, your damage dealers, don't die on you. So it's a pretty straightforward ability, but it's a great ability as well. I don't think it's as key, maybe, as some of the other third abilities, so it's kind of lower priority in my mind. For the third ability, but it's still a good ability. None of the abilities are really horrible, but except for maybe Zeus's. But yeah, that third ability isn't a must-have. Next god is Artemis. She is the long-range sniper. She also is a spread shot killer, so if you're using her for, she's pretty much huge for either the slow push strategy or for burst strategy. She can take out temples, with her long shot, or she can spread shot down, multiple targets, and that's how I use her pretty much all the time. You just drop her and spread shot, and it helps clear out all the enemy troops as well as the enemy buildings. Her strength is on the low end, as far as range strength goes, and she's definitely a squishy god, so you want to make sure you're always kind of keeping an eye on her health, and making sure the defense isn't getting her, or she's not under fire. You don't want to lose her, because she's a great god just because of her versatility of her long shot and her range, as well as her spread shot. The long shot is used with Sunstrike or by itself if you're lower level to take out temples. It does a whole bunch of damage, so it does 39,000 in one shot. It does have a longer cooldown. The range as you level up gets increased. So you definitely don't want to waste long shot on insignificant targets. I think that's always a bad move. You want to be long shotting key targets, monuments, and temples pretty much only. Occasionally, you can use long shot to clear out a huge mass mob. If there's a giant cluster mob running behind you, it can be used that way as well. But I always cringe whenever people use long shot on like a tower, like an Archimedes tower or whatever, unless it's like a last ditch effort, it's going to kill her or something like that. I'd always try to make sure I use the long shot for something more valuable as far as key targets go. And her third ability is Hawkstorm. This ability is great for kind of keeping everything off of her. So you'll pop this, and then hawks will come out, and they'll kill off everything in this giant cloud of birds around her. There's your area, and it does 97 strength per second. I'm assuming, doesn't specify, but I'm assuming it does 100 damage per second, and if it lasts 22 seconds, 2200 damage. That sounds about right. It might be a little bit higher than that, actually, because I've seen it do pretty well against acolytes, and I know they usually have a pretty decent amount of health. And then the final god is Hades. He's a little bit more tanky as far as he has medium high health. He is a ranged god as well. His strength is okay on his long distance attacks as well. His reanimate ability I discussed earlier, but like I said, raising skeletons on your side and killing enemy defensive skeletons. Rot, his ability, which is great for taking out houses and defenses, and they actually just buffed it, so I think I haven't got to really play around with it yet, but I'm thinking I haven't seen it used by some of the top end players yet, but I think that the change they made to it might make it more useful, so I might start leveling it up and play around with it. And then on the rot, what it does is that you target one single building, and then it spreads to all the buildings around it, and it does its damage. And then once it does all of its damage, then it stops spreading. So if it kills off a building, then it'll jump to another building and kill it off. And then if there's any damage left in its total strength value there, then it will keep going. If not, then it'll stop at that point. It's a kind of a little bit more complicated, but it's a pretty fun ability. I'm glad they buffed it. It needed a little bit of love. And then his third ability is Cerberus. He's your fun puppy to add to the battlefield. He's great out there. He can take out temples with his high health and high strength by himself. He is not the smartest dog in the world. You can't really, obviously target him, so he just goes wherever is close and kills whatever is close to him. So you always want to kind of keep that in mind when you drop him out. If you drop him on the far side of the map with nothing around, he's just going to wander around killing decorations and single troops. So try to, funnel him to where you want him to go by, dropping him in a location that's close to the temple or whatever. And if you're smart about your drop, he'll take out effective targets. And like I said, with his health and his strength, he can be devastating out there. He can take out a couple of temples by himself. So he's a fun ability as well. He's not a necessary vital third ability, but I'd say he, like I said, he's pretty fun. But the key third abilities, definitely, I'll just touch on that because the rest of the abilities, you can get and play around with pretty easily. The third abilities are usually the ones that are hard to decide which one to get. I would say, well, now slow time is huge, wrath is huge, especially for low level players because it does pretty good damage. And how effective is it to drop that in the middle of the base and then wipe out everything until everybody starts doing spread out bases? Wrath will be like a must have, and it'll be huge impact on low levels. It's kind of OP for low levels. Inspiration, and then bloodlust. Those are the inspiration, bloodlust, and slow time are the top three abilities in my mind for taking out bases and key targets, and that will help you the most as far as progressing through the game, along with wrath now being the fourth. And how you pick and choose which one of those you want to start with, it's kind of depends on your play style, so I don't want to tell you this is the one you must have. Obviously stuff like slow time is universal and is good for any type of attack style, but some of those other ones like wrath might be better than bloodlust for some people. It just depends on what you like to do, and if you got a juiced up Aries, if you like to run through and charge through everything, or if you just want to drop hair in there and just explode everything. So it's been a long video. Hopefully you guys got some good information. If you got any questions, please post them in the comments below, and then I'll make another video soon, like I said, covering more detail after I redo my defensive base design. I'll touch more on the updates and hopefully have some good news for you as far as how the updates progressing along. Alright, thanks for tuning in. Keep leveling up.